like metallic little tap. So this might be the dumbest idea. Let's continue the exhaust rattle saga. In the garage, the thing that we're going to try and do today is I'm going to pick the car up, we'll pull up the ramps, lift up the rear, and we're going to take out the steering linkage, the rod that goes from steering column to the rack. Because on there, while I was at Ace's Performance, they pointed out that there's a little shiny part, and that is the steering shaft that's actually dragging on one of the primaries. So if I really wanted to clear up all the noise, because that's going to pull timing, 100%, it's going to pull timing. You know, if that rattle, you know, dings, the knock sensors go crazy. So we're going to see if we can't eliminate that. It would be awesome if we can do that without removing the headers. Alright, so you've seen this before. We basically got the one bolt up top, and then we got two bolts down below, but then first, before we even think about touching the rack, we're going to unbolt the rack and pinion so that we can have a little bit of wiggle room. Now, I could attempt to let you guys see what I'm loosening, but it's just big enough for my hand. So here you go. Here's what I was talking about. There's this little ribbon right here. That's where the steering shaft, as it's spinning, it's rubbing onto the primary. And luckily, because it made a mark here, very likely it's made a mark down on the primary, where I can put a, I know the precise place to put a dent into the primary. Alright, so there we go. Center of that light right there is where we got to heat up and just clearance a little. You know what I mean? This can be difficult to get to. However, it isn't very difficult to get to the engine mounts and put a shim on the engine mounts just to pick it up a hair. So currently I'm putting this all back together, but I got you can see right there, a little small 1/8 inch aluminum piece of plate, and that gives me tons of clearance by the steering shaft. All right, so we've got the rack and pinion bolted up. We've got the steering shaft at the column bolted up, steering shaft at the rack and pinion bolted up. We've tightened the engine mount with the little 1/8 inch shim. So now I'm gonna go ahead and drop the car back on the ground, and I'm gonna drive off the ramp and then back on the ramp, because that'll simulate a load, and we can kind of modulate the RPM as we can with the clutch and all that good stuff. And let's see if we still got that same rattle. So the steering shaft has plenty of clearance, so we know it's not that. Let's check the other side, I guess. That 1/8 inch plate in, and then drop the car, or drop the weight back down, tighten up the motor mount. Voila. All right, shim on each motor mount, 1/8 inch shim. Let's see if that worked. That was it. Okay, all right. Let's make sure we test it out. It's still okay. So it needed a lot of RPM to get there, but it still did it. It seems to take more to do it. We are getting improvement. It is improving. It's just it's still there though. I got these. These are like heat shield, but they got a little padding to them. I'm gonna put this behind the license plate, test something out. All right, so now the license plate don't move. Wasn't the license plate. All right, so I think I've isolated the noise to the driver's side bank. Say if I like palm this thing, listen. There's a little bit of a rattle, a little bit of a... But whenever I held them together, like I tried to pull it inward, every time I palm like the driver's side bank of the exhaust, like the header, you heard this light little like metallic little tap. So this might be the dumbest idea, but I'm going to try and ratchet strap the two banks together, then do my test to see if pulling them together reduces the rattle. I know it's probably hard to pick up on the audio, and hear me out. We're not going to run the car for very long, but now when I palm this, it doesn't make the noise, being that there's tension. So let's perform our test now. All right, the ratchet strap thing, it did work. It still rattled. Let's try something else here. Okay, might be a long shot, but I had to do this to the old headers. On the primaries, I just put a nice little tack weld, you know, just to kind of make sure that there weren't vibrations that were happening between the primaries. I think we'll try that. Will this work? I have no idea. But we're about to find out. I also wanted to point out, I even removed the O2 sensors to see if that was the rattling from like an element on the inside. It's not. It's not the O2 sensors. Back to the drawing board. I am a little stumped. I'm not giving up, but I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so let's recap what's been done so far. So going back to when we went to Ace's Performance, they adjusted the rear exhaust tips so that there's no contact between the exhaust tips and the rear valance. That could have resonated, that could have done something. Well, that's no longer an issue. Today, I went and bolted down the license plate because it could have, flopped and went a little flimsy and rattled or something like that. Well, that's nailed down. I lifted the motor by shimming it 1/8 of an inch on each side so that it gave a little bit more clearance from the frame rail on the passenger side and the steering shaft and all the linkage there. Then I tried tack welding the primary tubes, which, funny enough, I hear the car cooling down and those tacks have popped loose. So it's no longer tack. But for the test, I did have them tack welded together. That was not the issue either. So I guess probably continuing into the next video to trying to find this silly exhaust rattle. I think what I need to do is start deleting maybe some of the items that could fail in the exhaust, which is resonators. Go ahead, buy some exhaust piping that'll, fit between where the resonators would have gone, and let's bolt it all back together and see if having a straight piece of pipe there, does that remove the rattling, or see if when we take the resonators off, do the resonators rattle in our hands? But yeah, go ahead and remove resonators, see if the resonators was the issue, and then basically move on to mufflers, So it didn't seem like it when we went to Ace's Performance that the mufflers were the culprit. So I think that's the game plan. Next is going to go ahead and order some piping so that we can just delete components in between, see if we can't get rid of this, or figure out what the heck that rattle is. Is it the mufflers? Is it the resonators? Because everything's all tightened down, connections are tightened down, there's no license plate rattling. I don't see anything that's resting on it that could tap on it that makes that loud noise. Yeah. Until next time, stay tuned. The exhaust rattle saga is not over.